from David Parker. I don't think he needs any introduction, but what I can guarantee you is that this will be a man bites dog. This won't be what everybody else is thinking. This is just what David Parker's thinking. And he'll be talking about the changing shape of e-commerce landscape and his perception. So thank you very much, David.
Oh, I don't know about that.
No?
No, that sounds far too complex. Right, there's a great big cross here, so I've been told I've got to stand here right at the beginning so that they get all the cameras focused in. Right. Right. Good morning. Welcome. I have to say, I had a look at the agenda. It's certainly very exciting, and I think it's got some amazing speakers. So I'm certainly not going to try and cover what they're going to cover, because I think they're far more expert than I am. I thought I'd just give a couple of minutes, almost as a scene setter, really, this morning, talking about perceptions and perspectives. And I suppose what I'm trying to do here is just make you think a little bit about how you approach the conference and I suppose what you get out of it. So who am I? I'm the CEO and founder of Polymath Consulting. We do projects around the cards, payments, acquiring space, etc. I think for this, though, it's far more relevant that I'm actually a fintech advisor, founder, investor. So it's not one of these consultants who sits in the shadows and waffles away. I'm actually hands-on involved in trying to run businesses and use business and using e-commerce and drive the business through. And I think that's far more important. Now, this is what people, most of you know me as, although, in fact, I'm noticing I've actually changed my shirt today. So you can tell I did actually wear a clean shirt this time. Same jacket, though. By the way, I hope you noticed the pin up there. Bees. Important, that, because that's how other people know me. And yesterday, by the way, was World Bee Day. Did you know that? World Bee yesterday. And make sure you keep your eye out for yellow-legged Asian hornets as well. You can Google that. You're very important. But that's how a lot of other people know me, all dressed up in one of these suits and things. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is different people, just by looking at you, get a different perception of who you are and what you do. And I think that's very true, because ultimately, I've never worked for a payment firm, but I'm standing here in a payments conference. I'm an old ad man, Saatchi and Saatchi. But it's all about perception, therefore. As an ad man, you're taught perception is reality. And it's all about considering different perspectives when we're actually looking to get where we want. After all, we all approach things in a slightly different way. And, you know, when you look at how things are presented to us, they aren't always what they appear to be. After all, is Alaska and Australia the same size? Yet that's the map most commonly presented to us. So we need to think about things. And the other challenge is we won't even recognize when things are closely related. Who knows what the one on the stripy thing is called? Any ideas? No, it's not Carpi from Zaire or Congo these days. Closest living relative to the giraffe, by the way. Likewise, the rock hyrax, which is about this big, is the closest living relative to an elephant. So things that are closely connected don't always look like they're closely connected. We need to think outside the box and question what our perceptions are. Because to some extent, it depends where you're looking from in terms of how you see things. Because how you see things may not be how the other person sees it. And that can have quite a different impact on what you're trying to achieve. I think it's particularly true when you're even in the same market. Because time and again, when I talk to business people and talk about this market, whether it's in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, they'll say, oh, but this is the way it is. And I go, well, hang on a second. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying that even in a single market, you can get two very different perspectives in terms of how you look at things. Now, there's some big questions, I think, that we're going to cover off today. I'm not going to try and stand up here and answer them all. I said there are much better presenters following on me. I think I'll just flag up a few, though. Obviously, we've had the JROC report out, and we're still going through the setting up of the phase one, I think, as the PSR likes to call it, or everyone else calls it a trial, of VRP and everything else. And I think this is a big topic of conversation today in terms of open banking, where we are, where we're going. And I would also say how fast we're actually getting there, because some of it, I think, if you're like me, slightly involved and frustrated now, I think we're now on our third, fourth, or fifth round of consultations. It seems to be never ending. They sort of publish a report and say, can we consult on it? So my weekend was spent getting another consultation back to them on their latest deciding findings. AI. I think this is really interesting. You know, what's the impact going to be? But this is an event about e-commerce. And what hits me more about this, and it's not the AI per se, it's who's going to win. Because just because everyone out there is saying, you know, AI is the solution, fraudsters are bloody good business people. And just because we're going to use AI to combat fraud, what does it not mean as well that the fraudsters are not going to use AI to carry it out? And I think there's a real interesting battle coming up on that scope, because I still believe to this day that the best business people out there are actually some of the fraudsters. They really understand ROI. What is the effort I've got to put in to get this return? We've seen globalization of payments in some way, but increasingly, I think what's going to become interesting here is the speed of cross-border payments. We're now seeing from the International Bank of Settlement their project to link faster payment or instant payment rails across markets around the world. So sitting here today, I'll be on the phone to a friend in the Philippines. I'll say, not a problem, I'll go into my bank, use a telephone number proxy, and 10 seconds later the money's there, literally. I think this is a particularly powerful project that's coming out from the International Bank of Settlement and could really have a dramatic effect on cross-border business. But this whole globalization of payments and the speed of cross-border payments, I think, is changing. And I think there's some discussions on that today. And for e-commerce, I think this is particularly interesting. We have, though, seen a real development, I suppose, or change in the e-commerce world these days. We're now moving into a different world where e-commerce is now embedded in everything everyone's doing. And a figure I found quite interesting was that someone was saying that digital wallets accounted for around 30% of all point-of-sale purchases in 2023. So, you know, scheme rails as we know them, whether it's Visa, MasterCard, JCB, or UnionPay, or whatever, you know, the wallets and the role of wallets is dramatically having an effect. Now, it may be less in Europe than it is in Asia, but it is having a huge impact on e-commerce and where it's going. And of course, we have regulations. Where would we be without our favorite regulators continually deciding they need more regulation, continually deciding they just want to tweak it slightly. They always like to tweak things slightly. You know, I think it's getting very interesting because, you know, when we look now what's happening with social media purchases, what's happening with TikTok, what's happening with all of these things, how the regulators. I asked a question of Chris Helmsley at a conference about 6 months ago when they introduced these push payment or announced the push payment stuff. And I said, surely making the banks liable 50-50, great, but you're just writing a fraudster's charter. The real way of doing it would be maybe 35-35 for each of the banks, 10% for the consumer, because bluntly, unless the consumer's got skin in the game, he's never going to care. And then 20% for the social network, media network that causes it. And he stood on stage and said, do you know what? I don't disagree with you. I nearly fell off. I don't have the power to do it, but the principle of what you're saying is forcing some of these people to actually have skin in the game is the right one. So I think we're going to see a very interesting time going forward with regulators over the next couple of years in terms of how they're going to start dealing with some of these issues, because they certainly seem to be getting more aggressive is probably the wrong word. I'd like to say maybe proactive and thought-provoking in some respects in terms of what they want to achieve. So, where are we? I suppose my my summation to this is that we're always looking ahead. We're always looking to see how we're going to take our business forward. And the problem is, most of us are sitting down there thinking, yeah, it's a straight road. I know where I'm going. And all I'd like you to do at today's conference is listen, talk, network. Some great people here. Because the road ahead, whilst it may look straight, I would argue, actually may not always be so. And sometimes you've got to take a few curves to actually get where you're going. And I'm hopefully today I've shown you taking in different perspectives, considering how different things are viewed, sometimes can lead you to a slightly different conclusion than maybe where you started from. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Angela now to really kick things off, because you're going to have some great people, I believe, now on a panel session coming up. So enough of me waffling away up here. As I said, I've never worked for a payments firm. I will leave you in the hands of people who know far more about payments than me. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.